gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another Bad Gamer bias review. And this one may be a little bit longer. And because it's a bias review, it might be because I really like this game. This is our Bad Gamer bias review for Final Fantasy X. Now, for those of you guys that are finding my channel for the first time for these reviews, we only review games that we have played on my Twitch with our community. And we only play games that I've start to finish, close to 100% and actually enjoyed with the rest of our community in that way. Final Fantasy X, we actually played with the Sin Unleashed hard mode, so my feelings on the game from its base, when I played it when I was younger, to how I played it from Sin Unleashed, may be a little bit different and conflicting, and I'll make sure that I explain the difference between like a vanilla playthrough and then the Sin Unleashed as we're going, so nothing gets confusing, and people aren't thinking like, oh fuck, well that's not the case. As always, guys, if you enjoy content like this, if we see the reactions, if we see the subscriptions going up, if we see people hitting the like or dislike button, because, hey, it's a biased review, you may not fucking agree with me. I'm perfectly fine with that. The more love and response that we see on these videos, the more of these we're going to make. Once a month, we'll have these premiering on the channel, and we'll be going through all of the games that we played on Twitch in our 2-year Twitch run that we've had up to this point. So let's talk about Final Fantasy X. You guys know the ranking system if you haven't already figured it out. There are 3 points that we want to make. The overall ranking, and then mods that you could grab to make the gameplay different and tougher. Because most of the stuff that we play on my channel is all hard modes. So our 3 categories that we take a look at is how does it play? How do the systems interact with each other? Does anything feel choppy? Does the gameplay itself make you take pause and not really enjoy it? The second one is the systems and in the game and how do they affect said gameplay. And the third one is the story captivating? Does it draw you in? Does it do a good job making you care about this universe? So we'll start right at the top. How does it play and how do the systems play into it? Final Fantasy X was kind of a massive accomplishment for the series. I was one of those guys that played 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 as they came out originally. Everything from the cinematics telling the story to the actual gameplay itself for 10 was just mind-shattering. Not just because Bender is Wakka, but because of the voice acting. Adding voice acting to a series like this, the mix and match of like the futuristic and then the fantasy aspect of like the newer fantasy. Not quite steampunk, but like a newer developed version of what would be a fantasy game at the time, which this was crossing over into, was great. The old, the new, all of the new systems, everything about the game felt like as you were progressing, you could feel the power difference getting better, and you felt the natural progression locked behind tough difficulty, interesting fights with new mechanics. And after you got the hang of the systems that were in the game, which we'll talk about here in a second, it just felt great. It played very well. The replayability for the game, because of the way that they changed all of those said systems that we're going to get to, really made it where this was not just playable, but super replayable. Because there were always things that either you forgot or you didn't know about until you got the strategy guide. And that's kind of been a thing for, I think, probably since 8. Maybe even 7 a little bit. That finding it on your own would have been really tough. But finding it with a guide or with other people that have played it and found that stuff was very, very interesting. All right, systems and the effects on the game. We could be here for a second because 10 itself, when you think about 10, you probably think about Blitzball. Blitzball 50-50 for some people because it was kind of pointless for some folks and freaking insane and fun for others. There was also extremely good items, extremely good progressive nature in getting good at the game and winning said tournaments, winning said leagues. There was important content locked behind Blitzball. So you could say it was forced, but I can tell you based on the amount of times that I beat the game, it wasn't necessary. You could still do it without. And you could. To a certain point. Extra things like the side quests for the Chocobo races, some of the most infuriating side quests that I've ever done. The Chocobo race, I was one of the unfortunate people that did finish that race, not once, not twice, but 4 times with the 0.1 when you needed the 0.0. A lot of the side quests in this did task you. A lot of the extra bosses with the release of the Dark Aeons and Penance and Nemesis and all of those other things with the battle arena and the going out and collecting all the monsters, kind of like a pseudo Pokemon thing, but you were literally just killing them and taking them back because that's what you had to do, right? Having to have additional items and weapons that you had to craft and move forward to accomplish that a little bit easier. It added a lot to this game. It added an insane amount of playtime, luck grinding. I mean, I could keep throwing these buzzwords out that everybody that is 100% in Final Fantasy X are either going to cringe or go, fucking A, buddy. Yeah. But either way, the systems in the game fit in the game. In a lot of ways, I think it was just okay, you could straight up beat this game with no problem. If you're going to try to do this extra hard content, you're going to be doing some extra work. And I really like that that was baked into the game. Again, when we played through on Sin Unleashed, every random encounter was insanely tough. And if you got lazy and weren't paying attention, they would smack you up. I do remember the one hit I can give this is at a certain point in the game after the Calm lands. If you were grinding at all in 10, you were way stronger than a lot of what you were going to fight. The Chocobo Stealer, even fights like Anima, if you were going to get extra summons, a lot of that stuff became incredibly easy if you were just following the natural progression of the game and grinding a little bit. If you are interested in a hard mode, it will be posted in the comment section for Sin Unleashed. That took that away from me, which also made my admiration for the game that much more. But overall, I would have to say one of the high points of Final Fantasy X was the addition of those systems and the additions of those extras that fit into the game, expanded on some of the lore in terms of like the Magus Sisters and other parts of the game, and getting to unlock the boss of bosses. It's absolutely fantastic. That part of this game stands out to me as one of the higher points of any of the Final Fantasies that I've played up to this point, including 6 and 7, which are two of my absolute favorites. For the last one, how does the story draw you in and captivate you? We aren't getting out of this review without talking about the laugh. A lot of people are going to say that some of the voice acting was so bad that it took away from drawing people into the game itself. I'm going to argue that it's not. I'm going to literally say that the fact that this was the first Final Fantasy to my recollection that had the voice acting that was there, that being the first time drew me in so much more. Just like the same feeling I had about needing to beat Sephiroth at all costs, I had that feeling about Sin. The way the story shifted and changed and showed us the other levels of darkness and disparity and death, the way that it conceptualized death being a norm and being a necessary evil, it just was very, very well explained. I cared about each and every one of the characters, with the exception of, maybe Riku. But even with Riku, they explained everything to a point that the Al Bhed had a massive part of the story. I really didn't feel like anybody was unexplained. Everything was very well drawn up to every one of the characters having the same cause and kind of feeling like they had the same gravity and stake in beating the odds. So in terms of, did the story captivate you? Absolutely. Did some of the voice acting maybe take some of that away from it? It's possible, but for me, when I was playing this the first time through, it didn't at all. I was still wide-eyed and just in shock that I was hearing these characters come to life vocally. And the feeling was easier, and it wasn't just all in your head that you had to put the situations together for them. Just blew me away. So in terms of, did the game captivate you to actually care about these characters? 1000%. Nailed that too. Not maybe as high of a mark as I would put the other systems that were within the game because of what they did for it. But yeah, you really gave a shit. And I can remember scenes just like this one. Every time Yuna dances, it's still emotionally impactful for me to even see scenes like this. And the fact that they were voiced just added that extra level that's there. So, as a complete caveat, the last time that we played this game was with the Sin Unleashed hard mode. There is so much that can be gained from this game being just a little bit harder and being a little more frustrating. And I know saying that with the Dark Aeons present is probably insane, right? But even making those harder, you had to put in extra, you had to care a little bit more, you had to min-max quite a bit. And to me, that makes this game stick with me, because even though I was min-maxing, and even though I was spending the extra time to get the extra done, to get strong enough to handle it, I didn't care. It's 10. It was still great. Extra blitzball matches, making sure you had to do every single one of the crest completion quests and the dark sigils, not dark sigils, I'm sorry, the sigils and the crests. Had some Dark Souls bleed over there, my bad. Everything about this makes me smile thinking about my playthrough for the game. And although I don't believe that 10 is my favorite Final Fantasy of all time, this one's definitely up there for me. And I could think about, as a youth, every level of these, with the gameplay being new, switching the characters in and out during combat, the way that the overdrive gauge was working for the limit breaks, for the Aeons, giving the summons personalities. It was just bonkers. This was the new. And it was something that, playing it, made me a Final Fantasy fan for the rest of my life easily. And I can pretty clearly say that is thanks to Final Fantasy X. In terms of the overall score, I know I've been super glowing about the game itself, but there are certain criteria that would mean they have to be there in every single phase to give something like this a 10 out of 10 and be cliche and give Final Fantasy X a 10 out of 10. For me, this one's going to be about a 9.5. There were a couple of things in the game that I feel like were a little tedious. The luck grind, some of the battle arena stuff, some of the extras, maybe the length of the Blitzball seasons and how many times you had to play. The thought of, oh my god, we have to save Yuna. Well, first, let me go play Blitzball for 7 hours. A lot of it conceptually didn't make a lot of sense. I will also say that some of the additional areas that we could go to with this one didn't have as much, I want to say, like, lore relevance. They kind of patched stuff in there. My example for this would be for Ultima. This is a monk that transformed into X, Y, and Z because of his batting issues with Yevon, and some of it, to me, and I'm sure I may be wrong, again, this is a biased reaction, so this is just how I feel about it, and if I'm wrong, I'm fucking wrong. But I didn't feel that they added anything to the story. I didn't feel that they gave a conceptual extra to what was going on. And honestly, for as much as I love Anima, that's kind of the same. A little bit. I understand, the Seymour saga and the stuff that happened with Seymour throughout, but outside of just being insanely badass, I don't know that Anima actually tied into the main relevant portions of the story the way that I would have liked it to. Because a lot of the other summons, when you get them and you speak to their soul, it's, we must defeat Sin. They give you information about what's actually going on with Sin. They talk about Jekt. Like, there's a lot that's there. Anima, being insanely badass, didn't have that connection or that tie. It was kind of out of place. And because of those somewhat out of place subtleties throughout the game that didn't really make a lot of sense to me for the extra content, gonna have to stop this one short right at a 9.5. Still a fantastic game. Will play again. Do plan on taking on Sin Unleashed Nightmare again very soon, either in my free time or on the stream. But yeah, fantastic game. I encourage everybody, even if this is not a relevant game still to this day, if you would like to appreciate this era of RPGs, 10 is a must play, and I hope that all of you that haven't do take the time to do so. As always, guys, the link for Sin Unleashed is going to be at the bottom of these comments. I encourage everyone to go grab that and see if you've got what it takes to accomplish a 100% playthrough with Sin Unleashed, because I will tell you that it took years off my life. Didn't take us years to beat it, but it took years off my life. That is one to write home to mom about 100%. Thank you guys again so much for being here for this Bad Gamer Bias review from yours truly, DJ Soundstorm. I look forward to making more content like this, and if you would like to see us make more content like this, please by all means hit that like button, hit the upvote or downvote, or, I mean, if I'm wrong and you don't agree with me, thumbs down this shit. Completely up to you guys. But at least show us that you were here. Leave a comment, tell me how wrong I am, tell me how much you agree. Hit that subscribe button. If you want to play with the notification bell, that's fine, but we do release content on YouTube every 48 hours, and I don't want to bother folks. But by all means, come back and check us out again. For those of you guys that did find the video and you enjoyed it, we hope to hear from you guys on Twitch Live when we get back to titles just like this one. Thank you guys so much, and we will definitely see you on the next one.